There is a structure in Antarctica bigger than the entire state of Florida. It has stood there for thousands of years, and now it is starting to fall apart. Scientists call it the Thwaites Glacier, but the story behind it is shocking. This is not just ice melting. It is a 74,000 square mile fortress of frozen water. It holds back a vast ocean. When it collapses, sea levels will not rise by inches. They will rise by feet. Cities like Miami, New York, and London could face floods unlike anything in modern history. Here is what few people realize. The collapse is not in the future, it is happening right now. And the speed at which it is breaking apart has scientists calling it terrifying and unstoppable. In the next few minutes, you will learn three things that will change the way you see our planet. First, how this massive glacier acts like a cork in a bottle and what happens when that cork pops. Second, the hidden underwater cavities that are eating it from below. And third, why some experts believe we may have already crossed the point of no return. Let's take a closer look and see exactly how this is happening. The Thwaites Glacier sits at the bottom of the world. It is part of West Antarctica. Most people have never heard of it, but scientists have been watching it for decades. They even gave it a nickname, the Doomsday Glacier. Here is why it matters. Imagine Antarctica as a frozen continent. Most of its ice sits on land, but glaciers like Thwaites flow toward the ocean. They are like slow-motion rivers of ice. Thwaites is special for two reasons. First, it is massive. The glacier is roughly the size of Florida or Great Britain. Second, it acts as a natural dam. Behind it sits even more ice, millions of cubic miles of it. The glacier moves about 2 miles per year toward the sea. That sounds slow, but in 2023, something changed. Satellites detected massive cracks forming in the ice shelf. The shelf is the floating part that extends into the ocean. Then came the real shock. In early 2024, researchers sent underwater robots beneath the glacier. What they found made headlines worldwide. The ice was not just melting from above. Warm ocean water was flowing underneath it. It carved out cavities the size of skyscrapers, creating a Swiss cheese effect that nobody predicted. One researcher described it as watching a Jenga tower in slow motion. Each piece that falls makes the next one weaker. And now we are at the stage where the whole structure is wobbling. Now here is where things get really interesting. The underwater cavities are growing faster than anyone expected. To put this in perspective, in 2018, scientists discovered a cavity under Thwaites. It was about 2/3 the size of Manhattan. That alone was alarming. But here's the kicker. That cavity formed in just 3 years. Think about that. 3 years to hollow out a space under the ice, the size of a small city, and that was just one cavity. Recent scans show dozens more are forming. Here is how the process works. Ocean currents carry warm water from the deep sea. This water is only a few degrees above freezing. Doesn't sound like much, right? But when it flows under the glacier, it melts the ice from below. The melting creates channels and caves. These spaces let more warm water flow in, which melts more ice, which creates bigger spaces. It is a feedback loop that speeds up over time. Scientists measuring the glacier's speed found something disturbing. In the 1990s, Thwaites moved about 1 mile per year. By 2020, that doubled to 2 miles. But in certain sections, it is now moving 3 times faster than it did 30 years ago. Here is what that means for you. Every year, Thwaites dumps about 50 billion tons of ice into the ocean. That is enough to raise global sea levels by about 4% of the total yearly rise. One glacier, 4% of global sea level increase. But if the glacier collapses completely, it would release enough ice to raise oceans by over 2 feet. And this is not spread over centuries. Some models suggest it could happen within 50 to 100 years, maybe sooner. 2 feet may not sound catastrophic, but consider this. A 1-foot rise in sea level can push the storm surge, flooding 100 feet further inland. 2 feet means coastal areas face what used to be once-in-a-100-year floods. Every single year, Miami, New Orleans, Amsterdam, Venice, Bangkok, all facing permanent flooding in low-lying neighborhoods. We are not talking about disaster movie scenarios. We are talking about insurance companies refusing to cover coastal properties. about entire communities relocating inland. But if you think that is shocking, wait until you hear this. Thwaites is not collapsing alone. It is taking its neighbors with it. Adjacent to Thwaites sits the Pine Island Glacier. Together, these two glaciers drain about 5% of the entire Antarctic ice sheet. They are connected by something scientists call the weak underbelly of West Antarctica. Here is the mechanism nobody saw coming. As Thwaites weakens, it puts pressure on surrounding glaciers. Think of it like dominoes. When one falls, it destabilizes the others. Recent research published in late 2024 revealed something chilling. The entire West Antarctic ice sheet might be more fragile than we thought. It is not sitting on solid bedrock. Much of it rests on bedrock that is below sea level, and it slopes downward as you go inland. This creates what scientists call a marine ice sheet instability. Essentially, once retreat starts, it becomes very hard to stop. The ice sits in a bowl-shaped depression. As the edges melt, more ice gets exposed to warm water, which melts more ice, which exposes even more. Glaciologists studied historical records going back thousands of years. They found evidence that West Antarctica has collapsed before. About 125,000 years ago, during a warm period, the ice sheet retreated significantly. Sea levels at that time were 20 to 30 feet higher than today. Here is where expert opinion gets stark. Dr. Ted Scambos, a glaciologist who has studied Thwaites for 30 years, said in a 2024 interview that the glacier is in its death throes. Those were his exact words, death throes. Another researcher, Dr. Aaron Pettit, stated that Thwaites could lose its ice shelf within 5 to 10 years. Once that floating shelf is gone, the glacier loses its buttressing effect. Imagine removing a doorstop. The door swings open faster. The ice shelf acts as a brake. It slows the glacier's flow toward the ocean. Without it, ice pours off the continent at accelerated rates. Some scientists push back on doomsday scenarios. They argue that ice dynamics are complex. Predictions of rapid collapse might be overstated. But even the most conservative estimates show significant changes happening within our lifetimes. The consensus is clear. Thwaites is losing. The only question is, how fast? This brings us to the most shocking discovery of all. We might have already crossed the tipping point, and there is nothing we can do to stop it. In September 2024, a team of researchers published findings that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. They used advanced computer models to simulate Thwaites' future. They tested hundreds of scenarios, different warming rates, different ocean temperatures, different ice dynamics. The result? In almost every scenario, Thwaites continues collapsing, regardless of what we do now. This is what scientists call a committed change. Even if we stopped all greenhouse gas emissions tomorrow, the glacier would keep retreating. The system has too much momentum. The warm water already circulating beneath it will continue melting ice for decades. Think of it like pushing a boulder down a hill. At first you can stop it, but once it gains enough speed, it is going whether you want it to or not. We have pushed the boulder. It is rolling. The implications are staggering. Coastal engineers will need to redesign infrastructure for cities worldwide. We are talking about trillions of dollars in seawalls, elevated buildings, and relocated communities. Some places are already adapting. The Netherlands has been building sophisticated flood defenses for years. Venice installed mobile barriers. But these solutions are expensive. Many developing nations cannot afford them. Bangladesh, with 160 million people and low-lying river deltas, faces an existential threat. Small island nations like the Maldives and Tuvalu are considering complete evacuation plans. These are not distant possibilities. Officials are drafting these plans now. Here is something most people do not realize. The collapse of Thwaites could trigger changes elsewhere. Greenland's ice sheet is also melting. Arctic sea ice is disappearing. The system is interconnected. When Thwaites goes, it does not just raise sea levels. It changes ocean currents. Those currents regulate weather patterns globally. Some models suggest disruptions to the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation. That is the current system that keeps Europe warm. We are not just talking about flooding. We are talking about reshaping climate patterns that have been stable for thousands of years. So what does all this mean for us today? Let me recap the three biggest revelations. 1. Thwaites Glacier acts as a cork, holding back massive amounts of ice. It is developing enormous cavities underneath, accelerating its collapse. 2. The collapse is part of a domino effect that could destabilize the entire West Antarctic ice sheet. This would affect global sea levels for centuries. 3. We may have already passed the point where we can stop this process. Adaptation is now our primary option. This matters. The decisions made in the next decade will shape coastlines for the next 1,000 years. If you found this valuable, hit that subscribe button. I break down complex global changes that actually affect your life. No fluff, just facts and analysis. Next, watch my video on the 3 cities that will disappear by 2075. It connects directly to what we covered today and shows which major urban centers are most at risk. Here is my question for you. If you had to redesign a coastal city for a 2-foot sea level rise, what would you do first? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.